Lookalike audiences are a powerful way to add account-specific cold targeting to your ads. We often, all of us, start with cold targeting in the form of kind of like similar artists, genres, other affinities that might be associated with our music. But when we make a lookalike audience, we can take data that is specific to us as artists and have kind of tighter, better, more specific cold targeting. Lookalike audiences, technically speaking, still are cold targeting. None of these people have ever heard of you before, so they're cold, right? But I kind of think of it as like warm cold targeting, if that makes sense at all, because it's just a little bit more informed than just picking one of the options out of the hopper that Meta provides for us and then just using that. And also, these lookalike audiences will evolve over time, so your ads will kind of improve as they go along. And the more you advertise, the more you spend, the more music you put through your account, the better these lookalike audiences should and likely will perform. In this video, we're going to talk about how to make my favorite lookalike audience in 2024 for music ads. Things have changed a lot over the years. You know, Meta is constantly updating and evolving their UI and how they do things. So we're going to revisit this topic and we're going to look at how I like to do it right now. Okay, so every lookalike audience has to start with a custom audience to begin with. We can't make a lookalike audience without a custom or seed audience, as it were, to base the lookalike audience off of. Last week, I did an extensive video about several different custom audiences that I really like to use. So if you want a full breakdown of how to make a bunch of different custom audiences, then go check that out. I'll leave it here or a link in the description of this video if you want to go watch that first. For this video, we're going to touch on just kind of how to make a custom audience very quickly so that we understand the basis for making a lookalike audience. So I'm going to start here in Meta's Audience Manager. Now I'm going to go to the top left and click Create Audience. I'm going to select Custom Audience. I'm going to start with an Instagram account audience. My Instagram account is selected. I'm going to go everyone who engaged with this professional account. I'm going to keep the audience retention at 365, and then I'll give it a name. I'll call it something like Instagram 365, and then I'll click Create Audience. So that in a nutshell is how you make a custom audience. Now there are a lot of different custom audiences that you can make, and I just did a flyby on you. Again, if you want more detail on this, go watch last week's video and then come back to this one. So as you can see here in my Audience Manager, I have this Instagram 365 audience down at the very bottom. I made mine some time ago, and it's got, you know, between 12,000 and 15,000 people in it, roughly. I've already made some lookalikes off of it, but we're going to repeat the process to do that. However, before we are going to make a lookalike audience, we need to think about where we want to make this lookalike audience for, the countries specifically. So if I go to make a lookalike audience in the top left, I go to create audience, lookalike audience, you can see that it has this audience location thing here. This isn't really a big deal if you're just making a lookalike audience, say in just the United States. I can just select United States. It's easy, you know, pretty straightforward. I select my lookalike source, However, if you're advertising in a bunch of different countries, inputting every single country is a huge pain. You can't just paste them in here like you can inside of like a normal ad set and it will do the pop-up for you. In fact, if I do that here, just paste all these countries, you can see it doesn't do anything. It's just all listed and nothing really happens. So kind of sucks. So we have to do a little bit of a workaround. So instead, we're going to create some saved sets of countries that we can use in this. Like if I go to this browse drop down here, you can see I've got these saved tiers of countries here that I often use. So let's make one of those saved tiers so you understand how to do that to make your life easier before we make a lookalike. So again, back to the main screen here. I'm going to go to create audience. I'm going to go to saved audience. Now we're not making a saved audience here, just to be clear. What we're doing is we're saving countries using this little feature, and then we're going to cancel out of it. If I go to search locations and I paste in a group of countries, like let's say I go to this group of countries right here under tier 1 on this spreadsheet, which I'll include a link to this sheet below if you want to use it. I'll copy these 13 countries. I'll go back to the audience manager. I'll paste them in. This little pop-up happens kind of like what we're used to if you paste them in when you're making a new ad set. This is what happens. So if we go to select under the drop-down, we're going to go to countries. We're going to go to match locations. So now I've got 17 locations here. Remember I said 13. It's added a few, so I want to remove those. So I'm going to go down. I'm going to get rid of the Åland Islands or Åland Islands, or I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, and I'm sorry. The Netherlands Antilles, and then I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. I'm going to get rid of the U.S. Minor Outlying Islands and the U.S. Virgin Islands. And I missed one. What did I miss? Thought I got rid of Netherlands Antilles. Apparently not. There we go. Okay, so we've got 13 countries here. That's exactly what I want. Then I'm going to click Save This List so I can use it again and add 13 locations. And I'm going to give it a name. So for this list, my list that's already saved is T1. If I name it T1, obviously I can't do that because I already have one. So this is what I would name it in theory if I were creating it again. Instead, I'm going to X out of this. You'll click save if you don't have this list already. And I'm going to cancel out of this. Now you can do this with multiple sets of countries. Obviously you saw that I have T1, T2, and T3. For my ads, what I've been using lately is these 13 for T1. If I go to the secondary tiers tab on this spreadsheet, I've been using this set of 7 countries under Tier 2A for all of my Tier 2 countries. The reason is the populations are bigger in these countries. And so if I'm going to use these countries, I'm going to throw the net a little bit wider and make my life easier. And then for Tier 3, I'm really only using Brazil and Mexico. The reason is, again, lots of people, big populations, generally good results on Spotify. As you go down this Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 list, the payout per stream is less. Not that that's really like a massive factor, like we're not making a lot of money per stream anyway. However, it is a consideration for some of us. So that's kind of why I do it. The list gets smaller and smaller the further down I go. So 13 in Tier 1, 7 in Tier 2, 2 countries in Tier 3. That's what I'm using right now. Obviously, there are more countries in here. If you want to try more of them, feel free to do so. If you don't live in one of these countries, feel free to add your own country, depending on which tier it's in. Kind of add it however you see fit. Totally up to you. This is just what I do. Okay, so we have our custom audience. We have saved a few sets of countries that we're going to use when we create our lookalike audience. Now, hey, it's time to create a lookalike audience. So this is how I've been using lookalike audiences in 2024. Lately, this is how I've been using it for my own ads. This is what we've been testing, and well, I should say not testing anymore. This is what we've been using with success inside of my agency, DuPree X, for a lot of artists, and this is working quite well these days. So again, we're going to go to the Create Audience button in the top. We're going to go to Lookalike Audience. The first thing we need to do is select your lookalike source. So what I like to do is type in the source I'm looking for, because I have a ton of different audiences, and for me, I have access to a ton of different accounts. So I just want to quickly get to the thing that I'm looking for. So if I type in Instagram, I'm looking for this Instagram 365 audience. Obviously, it's not under value-based sources. So I'm going to go to other sources, and there's my custom audience that I'm looking for. Now I'm pulling from that Instagram 365 audience as the seed. That audience contains people who have previously engaged with my content on Instagram specifically within the past 365 days. This group of people knows I exist. We're going to make a group of people who does not know I exist, but they are similar to all of these people based on all of the data that Meta has on them. So now we get to this audience location thing that we just did. So instead of typing anything in, I'm going to go to Browse. I'm going to go to Saved Locations. And now I have this list of countries here, these tiers that I've made. So obviously you can see in T1, I have the 13 countries that we just did. In T2, I have the 7 countries that were on that list in the spreadsheet that will be at the link below. And then I have Brazil and Mexico in T3 because that's what I've been using. So I'm going to select T1. I only want T1 in this. I'm going to split my lookalikes out by tier. You don't really have to, as you'll see based on the way we set this up. I just like to because it gives me a little bit more kind of granular control over what I'm doing, and also gives me kind of like a quicker, easier heads-up display when I'm like scanning titles of ad sets or campaigns or looking at the ad set level. I want a very quick understanding of what's going on in there. Okay, so we have the source, we have the country targeting. Now we get to select audience size. This is the thing that I would say for me, in my experience of all the things I've been trying and testing, has changed the most over the years. For the longest time, I was doing a 1% lookalike audience. And in a country like the United States, it's got like 300-400 million people. That totally works. It works great. But in some of these smaller countries like Finland and Sweden and Norway, 1% is really not that big of a pool of people. But that's not really the biggest reason that I've kind of made this adjustment from using 1% to using something bigger. The bigger reason is that Meta knows everything on platform, everything about every single user it's going to pull into this audience. It knows who has engaged with content similar to yours yesterday or 365 days ago. It knows who is a 1% similarity compared to the seed audience. It knows who is in that 10% similarity to the seed audience. And as I understand it, Meta does a really good job these days. The targeting has just gotten way, way better over the last several years. It does a better job of starting with the warmest, most similar people first, and then branching out from there. So even if we pick the biggest option here at 10%, theoretically, it's going to start at 1% and then go out to 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, etc. So we're not really doing ourselves many favors by going all the way down to 1%. And on top of that, if you're using a conversion campaign, which most artists are, and it's what I try to use every time, lookalike expansion is automatically turned on at the ad set level now. So even if you do go to 1%, Meta is automatically going to start looking outside of that at some point anyway. So we might as well have the biggest pool of people that we can. And on top of all of that, music is a big global product with a big global market. All that to say, what I like to do is come down here, instead of doing 1%, I take this slider all the way to 10. I like that it gets to an audience of about 50 million people. That feels right to me. 50 million is always kind of consistently over the past several years been a good targetable audience size for ad campaigns for music. I've always liked that. I've always gotten good results with that. This is how I set it up. I use my seed audience. I go to my tier of countries. I do 10%, and then I click create audience. So that's how I create the bulk of my lookalike audiences these days. I use those exact settings regardless of tier. Now, as you can see at the top of the screen here, I have 3 different tiers that I've done. I have T1, T2, T3. They're all based off of that Instagram 365 audience. That's my favorite audience to start with. If you want to go more narrow than that, there are a whole bunch of other custom audiences that I have made in the past and I covered in last week's video. Again, if you want to go check that out, you can make these lookalikes based off of all of these audiences if you want to. You can even go tighter if you want to. You can see here that I have other audiences that are US only. I have made a US only 1% lookalike based on all of these countries, or excuse me, all of these custom audiences that I've made in the past as well. The name of the game here is testing. I like to start with 10% in tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 for lookalikes based off of Instagram 365 as kind of the core setup for music ads across artists. Now, I'm always testing stuff for myself, and we will often use other custom and lookalike options for artists based on specific purposes, depending on what the goal is. So if it's just to grow on DSPs, this 3 lookalike setup with this 1 custom audience is a great way to do this. If you're going deeper than that and you're trying to generate leads, or you're trying to get Instagram followers, and you're trying to get Facebook page likes, or you're trying to sell products, there are arguments to be made for other custom audiences and other lookalike audiences. But if you're kind of still surface level and you're just kind of staying there for an extended period of time and just trying to grow on DSPs, this setup works great. Okay, so that's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you got something out of it, then drop us a comment or give us a like. And if you don't subscribe to this channel, please make sure to do that. It helps a ton. I know it seems like a really small thing, like hitting the like button, adding a comment, hitting subscribe, all that stuff. And I know every other YouTuber always says that, but it really does mean a lot, and it goes a long way. So if you are subscribed, thank you very much. If you're not and you're about to, thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video and you want to go deeper with topics just like this every single week, then I hope you'll subscribe to my newsletter as well. It's called The One Thing. Every week I send out one thing that I am either thinking about or testing to succeed as an independent artist. So if you do want to subscribe to that, I'll leave a link to do so in the description of this video. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.